Laverty? Jennifer Laverty? So Jennifer, you have 5 minutes to present and then 5 minutes for questions. Your time will start after you introduce yourself, and you can introduce yourself and state who you are and how you'd like to be addressed by members, and then your time will begin.
Perfect. My name is Jenn Laverty, and you can address me as Jen. My name is Jen, and I work with a nonprofit organization that works very closely with clients who have a low or limited income. Some do not necessarily understand the ins or outs of tenancy rules and rights, and I'm here to speak on the need for permanent rent caps based on the unit, not the person. If this bill passes, with the shortening of the eviction timeline as well, it will be catastrophic for very many families and individuals. While there's many diversion programs in place, as Aaron Austin previously mentioned earlier this afternoon, this 3-day timeline would be severely limiting for us to be able to assist and obtain all the information required to have a turnaround so quickly to be able to assist those that need the help the most. We're in a very volatile housing market right now, and a vast majority of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people rely on their mid-month pay to put towards their rent. A 3-day eviction notice will take this away from them. This in itself will contribute to our ever-growing homelessness rate in the province. Many of the working population do not qualify for NSPHA, Nova Scotia Provincial Housing, or the rent subsidy program either. Significant changes to those criteria need to be made for them to be more accessible to those that need it the most. More low-income to mid-income housing needs to be built. More social housing and co-ops need to be built. One of the other issues I see is the abuse of fixed-term leases and rental cap loopholes, as Sydney mentioned as well. There's many landlords that take advantage of this. They end up getting more money for giving less quality of what they're renting out. There's nothing in place to hold them accountable, and there's too many stories of this taking place and the tenancy board siding with them where it's obvious they should not have. I have a client currently whose landlord is trying to evict her for a $50 late rent fee, which he spelled out in his lease, but in actuality, she should only have to pay 1% late fees, as according to the RTA. We need more physical housing, not just condos and apartments. We need to hold more developers accountable for their promise of affordable housing and not let them get away with changing their plans and then just paying a fine and going on their merry way. Housing is a human right. All levels of government have failed to legislate and regulate the housing industry. Everyone should be able to become and stay housed. Right now, I myself am forcing dem eviction, as is the rest of my community of Ocean Breeze. We live in fear of coming home every day to find out that we have to leave in 3 months. I have lived in this community for over 10 years and raised both of my girls, who are 28 and 14. For my youngest, this is basically the only home she's ever known. For my oldest, she's raising her own 3 children here, and this is their only home. I have a pretty good job, and I can barely afford to go and rent a 1-bedroom apartment right now in this market. This is the reality that we live in. Basin Heights has taken away our enjoyment of our home. They're destroying our community, our friends, our families. Our children are watching their homes being torn down in front of them. No matter how hard this is as adults, it is infinitely more difficult on them and their mental health. There is nowhere for us to go that is affordable. Thank you. We are going to be forced to become unhoused, or forced to live in tents or their cars. We need to do better. If we can't stay here, we're going to be forced to move and leave the province. This is just not acceptable on any level.
Thank you, Ms. Laverty. I will now open up the floor for questions from members. MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for coming in and giving us this presentation. On top of it being your job to help find people homes or to, get them in a different place, in a different space, you yourself are living that experience. And I want to say thank you for coming in today and giving us that. To a point of, right now, I know that you said that you're facing dem eviction. What does this look like for you if the legislation passes and there's only a 3-day period, a 3-day grace to be able to for the landlord to evict? What does that look like for you and maybe others that are in your community right now?
Ms. Laverty.
For me, if I came home tomorrow or tonight even and had a 3-day eviction, I would have nowhere to go. Literally nowhere. I would have to set up a tent. And I work for an organization that is government funded. There's something wrong with that picture. I have a child, I have 2 children, but I have 1 child in my care, and I have animals, and I would have to live in a tent. A lot of my clients saw me on the news when they started demolishing the building that I used to live in, and they didn't understand how in the past year when I said, I'm trying to advocate for you as much as I can, they didn't really understand the true effects of that. It wasn't just words.
MLA Burrell.
Well, thank you for both sides of this explanation from your work and from your life. And I wanted to go back to the first part of what you said. You used a very powerful word. You said that it would be a catastrophe for the people that you work with in housing if the 3-day limit comes into place. I wonder if I could ask you to say a little more about the situation of some of your clients and why it is you think it wouldn't just be an inconvenience or a problem, but actually a catastrophe in their lives.
Ms. Lafferty?
It would be a catastrophe because they are already discriminated against because of their low income or their mental health problems or their addiction problems. We work very hard to try to ensure that, as I said, housing is a human right, and it's hard enough trying to have landlords agree to keep them housed if they have episodes or things like that. That's not to say that there aren't problematic tenants, but the reality is that if this 3-day eviction thing came through, a lot of people only get money once a month, and they have to toggle between rent and food and whatever else. And a lot of people do not live extravagantly. They literally live paycheck to paycheck. And if they're only getting money once a month, a lot of people rely on services like My Place to help them pay their bills on time so that they don't have to worry about something like that happening and their bills are paid on time.
MLA McDonald, then you have about 1 minute and 45 seconds.
All right, well, then I'll try to be quick. So I just want to be clear, like, a lot of presenters keep saying the 3 days. I mean, it was 15 before then it wound up going, because it used to be 30. I didn't even know that it could have been 30. It's now 13, because it's 3 days is when you can do it, then there's a 10-day process. So it's not 3 days and you're out. I mean, there's a process to it. Now, I'm not renting. My wife was renting, and she was actually in Ocean Breeze before she moved in with me. So, but am I incorrect on that it used to be, I'm going to say 30 days because it was 15 before you could submit it, then it was 15 days for it. It's now 3 and 10, which is 13. I'm just wanting your clarification because everybody keeps talking about the 3 days, but nobody says, well, it's 13 days. It used to be 30. It's now 13. Not saying it's totally better that it's not 30. I just want to make sure we're clear on it.
Ms. Lafferty?
So yes, it used to be the 30 days, and then it was you could get your notice after the 15 days, but it's like a widely understood that this new bill would pass it so that after 3 days they could give that notification, and that's what is scaring a lot of people, because if you don't have the money on the 15th, you're sure as heck not going to have it 3 days after your rent is due to begin with. And it's very hard for people to go paycheck to paycheck. That's why that middle of the month paycheck is what gets people through, because they could like maybe top heavy pay the beginning of the month and then make up the rest at the 15th.
Order. The time for questions has been allotted to 10 minutes. On behalf of the committee, thank you for coming today, Ms. Laverty, and presenting. And we appreciate your time and your knowledge on the topic. Thank you.